The Houston Astros shook up their coaching, training, and front office staff last week. Hitting coaches Alex Cintron and Troy Snitker are out. So is catching coach Michael Collins, head athletic trainer Jeremiah Randall, as is assistant GM Andrew Ball. All were on expiring contracts. The moves come as the Astros just missed the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Manager Joe Espada will be back, so will general manager Dana Brown, but the pressure may be on for the pair to get the Astros back to the playoffs next season. To discuss, we're joined now by Bleav in Astros podcast co-host Jeff Balke. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning, Craig.
First, were you at all surprised by the coaches and staff who are not being retained next season?
No, not really. I mean, I think given the Astros' anemic offense this year, it made sense. I don't know how much firing Troy Snitker and Alex Cintron is going to do for the Astros' hitting woes. So much of that is based on the personnel. But I did see, I mean, it did seem kind of obvious that might happen. Also, you know, the trainer with all the injuries and all the problems they've had, along with Ball, the assistant GM, who was basically in charge of sports performance and sports medicine. So it makes some sense. Again, I'm not so sure how much all of those things are contributed to the lack of success or how much the firings will contribute to more success. But it seemed like the thing they could sort of the least difficult thing that they could do. They weren't going to get rid of Joe Espada and Dana Brown yet, but they only have one more year left on their respective contracts. So certainly they're going to feel some heat.
Is it playoffs or bust? Is it World Series or bust? What kind of pressure is on the two of them?
I think it really depends on what happens next year. I think for Dana Brown, it's more about the talent that he's able to assemble. I'm not sure it's necessarily about postseason for him. I think for him, it's going to be about where the younger players are able to develop and how. It's going to be about, you know, what kind of moves he can make in the offseason to sort of restructure their lineup. What can they do to pull in pitching help, which they're going to need? For Espada, it might be a playoffs or bust. And again, so much of this is going to depend on what's in front of him, you know, what players he has to play. But I do think there'll probably be a bigger hot seat for him than there will be for Dana Brown. But both of them are probably going to be feeling it.
So other than pitching, offense, and defense, I guess there's some work to do, right?
Right. I mean, pitching, it's more about quantity than quality, right? They have good pitching. It's just they don't have a lot of it because they've had so many injuries. I think with hitting, the truth of the matter is the Astros had for the first time in a while, a really free swinging lineup, a lineup that struck out a lot. That's pretty abnormal for the Astros on the whole. In addition, they didn't hit for any power, and they were terrible with runners in scoring position. So the rule is you've either got to hit consistently for average or you've got to hit for power, one or the other. And the Astros didn't do either very well. So I think, and there's going to be some complications about who's going to play in the outfield, about who's going to play the infield, which is super crowded. I think that's where a lot of the energy in the offseason is going to have to go, with the exception being they're going to need more pitching, period. They just need more pitchers. They need more arms. But I think figuring out the offense is going to be a much more complicated task.
Is there a way for the Astros to continue to pursue not just a playoff spot, but true contention for a title next season and replenish the system with prospects that'll be able to help beyond next season?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the draft will certainly help them. They're going to probably have some compensatory picks as well as their own. So I think another good, healthy draft will certainly make a difference for them, particularly if they decide to draft more players that are out of college or a little closer to being ready for the majors. I certainly think that through the international draft, where the Astros have had a tremendous amount of success over the years, it's another place where I think they can do through the international signing period. We'll be able to bring in some younger players. But I'm not sure I see them making massive trade moves outside of the major league roster. I really think their 40-man roster, there are plenty of options on there, you know, of guys that can be moved. And they're going to have a little bit of money to spend this year. They're going to be below that apron. They're certainly not going to re-sign Framber Valdez, which will save them some money there. So I think they will have some avenues to improve without decimating what is already a pretty meager minor league system.
There's been a lot of talk about an expected labor dispute when the current collective bargaining agreement ends at the end of next season. Does that suggest to you that next year may truly be the last great window of opportunity for the Altuve Correa generation of Astros to make a run?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. At least for those individual players. I don't know about for the franchise, but for the players, yeah. Look, the next major labor situation is going to be serious for Major League Baseball. They are in a very unique position in terms of they have money. They're not the owners are pretty holding pretty firm on what they want, especially with who knows what's going to happen with streaming revenue and with all of the all the carriers of baseball teams who aren't going to carry these teams anymore because all of these television stations are going under. So I think it's going to be it could be a protracted situation, maybe the worst one since the 90s is that some are projecting. And I think, I think there are a lot of teams who are going to see their fortunes change pretty dramatically after next season, just simply because of the way that the landscape of Major League Baseball and its payroll is going to change.
Since you've raised a number of potential priorities for the Astros this offseason, obviously it's going to be a busy one. They've got a lot of clarifying to do. But if you were general manager Dana Brown, let me ask you this. What would be your priorities 1, 2, and 3 for this offseason, as specifically as you can get it?
I mean, jokingly, pitching, and pitching would be 1, 2, and 3. But I would say pitching number 1, particularly the starting rotation. I think they're going to need another starter. They only really are going to have 2 healthy starters, probably, maybe, I guess 3, maybe if Spencer Arrighetti is healthy in the offseason. So they're going to need starting pitching. I think that's first and foremost. Second is, I think they need to clarify what's going to happen on the infield. I think that might mean either dealing Christian Walker or Isaac Paredes, perhaps Mauricio Dubon, especially now that they have another sort of utility player in that role, and Bryce Matthews maybe on the come from the minor leagues. The third thing is, I think they've really got to make a decision about what they're going to do with the outfield long term. They have multiple guys who are young, and Jake Myers is a guy that right now might be at the peak of his trade value. You have to I think you have to look at those 3 spots. Like, how are you going to set up your infield going forward? How are you going to set up your outfield going forward? And how many decent quality starting arms can you get in here? Those are the biggest questions. I think cleaning up the infield and the outfield is maybe an easier task because you've got a lot of players that you can kind of move. Pitching is going to be the hard thing. Finding pitchers who aren't injured to populate this lineup is not going to be easy, but it's got to be job number 1 for Dana Brown this offseason without question.
So your top 3 priorities are pitching, infield, and outfield. Isn't that everything?
Well, what I say, I don't mean you have to replace everybody. I just mean they need to clarify what those positions are going to be. And if they can use look, there are guys on this roster right now who probably aren't going to be on the 40-man roster who we know who they are. There's a potential Christian Walker that gets moved. There's a potential Jake Myers that gets moved. Chas McCormick's probably not going to be back. There are a bunch of guys that we know as Astros fans and as watchers. This could be a very, very different team next year in a lot of concerns. And so I think it's more about clarifying those positions in the outfield, clarifying those positions in the infield. I don't think they need a massive upgrade in every position except for pitching.
Jeff Balke co-hosts the Bleav in Astros podcast. He also writes for the Houston Press. Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig.